What's up, my friends, and welcome into the PHLY Phillies podcast. We are broadcasting live from the Xfinity Lounge here at the PHLY studios. A happy Monday to each and every one of you, and welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast, which, of course, is brought to us by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. A hello to you and a happy Monday. Tyler Zulli, Andrew Frazier with you as we get you set for another week of Phillies baseball as we get closer and closer and closer to the end of August and into the beginning of September, which, of course, signals the final month of the year, the regular season, that is, for the Major League Baseball season. We have a lot to get into over what has transpired over the weekend. It was a roller coaster weekend, both on and off the field. Phillies take 2 of 4. They split the series against the Nationals. They end up going 6-4 on the road trip, which, if you remember on Friday, is exactly what Andrew and I had asked for heading into the weekend, which was to win 2 of the final 3 games and to go 6-4 on the road trip, and you can reevaluate from there. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. Aaron Nola makes his return to the mound yesterday for the first time in 3 months. But before that, Joan Duran gets hit with a comebacker up the middle. Things look really bad. They bring the card out, ends up getting an MRI, no structural damage. The next day, he says he's cool. So what looked to be really bad ended up being pretty okay. And probably a little bit sore, I would imagine, but what looked to be much worse ended up being a very minor thing. Now, inversely, on Saturday, the news breaks. Saturday afternoon, a big thank you, by the way, to Jamie Lynch and Rich Hoffman for doing an emergency podcast on Saturday evening. I was on dad duties that day. Then on Saturday night, big news, which we thought was maybe some minor conversations about Zack Wheeler, where I said I was at like a 2 out of 10 in terms of concern level, where we thought maybe it was arm fatigue, dead arm period, what it might be. Low level of concern becomes a much higher level of concern when it gets announced that Zack Wheeler has a blood clot in his, they called it an upper extremity, so they're talking about shoulder, arm, that area. We have a lot to talk about. I really wish we had like 3 hours today because we have a ton to discuss in the next 57 minutes of the show. So a big thank you to everybody who is here. We're going to talk about Zack Wheeler in the second segment. And I want to dedicate some significant time to Zack Wheeler, what it means for him. I spoke to some medical professionals. I am myself not a medical professional, obviously. Spoke to some medical professionals, read some medical journals. I did the best research that I possibly could to come up with an understanding of the situation. We'll talk more about that. We have to get into our Ace Hardware Temp Check segment, which we'll do in the third segment. And then is expansion imminent? We've thought about it. We thought that it's going to come at some point. But Rob Manfred made it pretty evident that this is going to happen sooner rather than later. We'll talk about cities that could get teams where we think the most likely scenario is going to be. Spoiler alert, Nashville. We'll talk about how realignment might happen. Divisions are going to be realigned. You may see leagues get realigned. This could be the largest structural change in baseball maybe ever. And we'll talk about it at the end of the show as well. But let's start here on the PHLY Phillies podcast with yesterday's game. Because I think from a 1,000-foot lens, the big storyline of yesterday's game is the Phillies win. They win 11-9. They finish the road trip 6-4. So they win the first 3 games. The first 4 games. They win the 3 games again. They sweep against the Texas Rangers. They win the first game against the Cincinnati Reds. Then they lose the last 2 against the Reds in pretty convincing fashion. Didn't feel good about the way that they lost to the Reds. And then I didn't feel good about the way that they lost to the Nationals on Thursday night. And that's why we talked a lot about it on Friday. And then over the weekend, they win on Friday. They lose on Saturday. Taijuan Walker was excellent. They don't get any kind of offensive performance. And then yesterday, Aaron Nola was not very good, and they score 11 runs. And so it's almost, I don't know if you've ever seen that graphic where it's like the 3 sliders, and you can click on 2 at any given time, but if you try to click on a third, another one goes away. And it really doesn't apply to the Phillies, I don't think, this year as much with the third one. But it's like offense, starting pitching, bullpen. And when you click on offense and starting pitching, bullpen slides the wrong way. And if you click on bullpen, offense slides the wrong way. Well, Saturday, Taijuan Walker was excellent. 6 2/3 innings. He gave up 2 earned runs. Another start where Walker keeps him in the game. I thought he might be done after 6. Rob Thompson let him get back out for the 7th. He got 2 outs in the 7th. Man, I can't say enough good things about Taijuan Walker. Like, especially how much we clamped down on this guy last year, and rightfully so. Taijuan Walker has been good all year long. That's why we talked about him on Tuesday of last week. We'll talk more about him, I'm sure, as the season progresses. But he has really solidified a starting rotation that has had a lot of fluctuation towards the back end of it, with Nola missing extensive time, Mick Abel being up and down and then being traded, Ranger Suarez dealing with some fatigue, Jesus Luzardo having, a handful of bad starts in there, mostly good starts, but a handful of bad starts. And now with Zack Wheeler, missing who knows how much time. Tip of the cap to Taijuan Walker. But the Phillies score 11 runs yesterday and win 11-9. But if you ask me what the storyline of yesterday's game was, I would tell you it was the return of Aaron Nola. And I saw a tweet today, and I don't know where it came from. I apologize, where basically there was like Aaron Nola poor pitching erasure in that tweet. And it was saying that he got unlucky. And I guess to an extent, you could say that may be possible. Aaron Nola gave up a double yesterday that had a 0.60 expected batting average. So, sure, you could sit there and say that Aaron Nola had a couple of unlucky bounces. But Aaron Nola also yesterday gave up 6 hits. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 hits on the 10 balls that were put in play. He had 10 balls put in play yesterday over 2 1/3 innings. He gave up 7 hits. 4 of those balls were hit at 99 miles an hour or 98.8 miles an hour or more. Single, 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 double. And if you want to talk about the fact that, yeah, sure, he gave up a double with an expected batting average of 0.60, totally fine. However, he also gave up a single with an expected batting average of 930, one of 920, one of 710. The double that he gave up to Jose Tena had a 390 expected batting average. He gave up a single that wasn't hit all that particularly hard, had a 960 expected batting average. And then a ball that was put in play at 75 miles an hour, it was a single by C.J. Abrams, despite the fact that it wasn't hit all that hard, had an 840 expected batting average. So we're not going to sit here and say he could have gotten out of that inning with no runs. He wasn't good in that inning. There's no question about it. His first 2 innings were solid. And then he came unraveled. He gave up 6 runs in a third of an inning, 6 earned runs in a third of an inning in that third inning. Gave up 7 hits, only walked 1, and the strikeout numbers were good for the first 2 innings. He ended up striking out 4, despite the fact that he only ended up getting 7 outs. I think the Phillies are going to need more from Aaron Nola, obviously, than what you saw last night or yesterday morning. God, the 11:30 start was so stupid, by the way. They're obviously going to need more than what you got from him yesterday morning. But I think just like on the surface, there were a lot of people, myself included, who got to a point with Aaron Nola where he had missed so much time that it was like, I'm actually kind of excited to see what Aaron Nola can do. He pitched really well in his final AAA start. He struck out 11 over, I think it was 5 2/3. And there was an expectation of maybe with the time off, maybe you'll see a slight increase in velocity. Maybe you'll see a better command selection. Maybe you'll see him throwing more strike one to get ahead and stay ahead. Yesterday, you did see a small uptick in velocity, 0.1 miles an hour, but it was there. He maxed out at 93 with his fastball. The sinker, he only threw it 5 times, but it was up about a half a mile an hour compared to his season total. But there was a lot left over the heart of the plate. He wasn't missing many bats. And as I said, he got 7 outs. He gave up 10 balls in play. So he only got 3 outs on the balls that were put in play yesterday. And as much as you would love to talk about the fact that they won the game, and they did, and we should be talking about it. Alec Boehm returned, hit a home run, looked good in the process. Trey Turner with a pair of hits. Bryce Harper with a pair of hits. Nick Castellanos with a pair of hits and a home run. Nick Castellanos, we talked about on Friday, had been struggling in the month of August. Was much better on Sunday morning. Weston Wilson, Harrison Bader, Bryson Stott, and Kyle Schwarber all with a hit themselves. The Phillies yesterday had 12 hits and had an expected batting average of 345. They had a 50% hard hit rate. Mitchell Parker was terrible yesterday. As bad as Aaron Nola was, Mitchell Parker was just as bad, to the point where the second most whiffs on the day were generated by Max Lazar. The third most were generated by Orlando Rebalta. Both relievers, by the way, both didn't start the game, 4 and 3. Nola got 7, Parker got 3. The point is, yesterday was, if you like pitching, yesterday was not the game to watch. But I think you have to separate the offense and Nola in this particular conversation, because I'm not going to sit here and B and C about a win. That would be stupid. But I also think you have to understand that the conversation about Aaron Nola yesterday, he was not good. So let's turn our attention to the road trip as a whole. It was 10 games in 10 days over 3 cities. And if you would have said to me at the beginning of the 10 days that the Phillies were going to go 6-4, I don't care how it happened. I don't care if they won 1 game in Texas, 1 game in Cincinnati, and swept out Washington. I don't care if they won the way that they did, where they swept out Texas, won 1 in Cincinnati, and split in Washington. 6-4 on a 10-game road trip over 10 days in 3 cities is a good measure to me. Anything more than that, I think, is sizable. Anything less than that, you're probably where you're expected. But I have always been a big proponent. If a good team can win slightly above 50% of its road games, if your team can be somewhere in, let's say, 45 to 46 win range on the road, and you're in a 45 and 37 range on the road, I can't ask for anything more than that. Because even if you only go 45 and 37 at home, you're still, 45 and 36 it would be. You're still a 90-win baseball team. But the expectations is you play better at home than you do on the road. And so if you can be, even at 41 and 41, if you can be a little bit more than that at home, you're setting yourself up to getting closer and closer and closer to being a postseason team. And so if you would have said to me at the beginning of this series that the Phillies were going to go 6-4 on a 10-game road trip, I will take it. Now, throughout the series and throughout the 10-game stretch, there were frustrations. There's no question about it because of how it happened. They won the first 3 games in Texas. They won the first 4 games of the series overall. So if you take that and split it and take the first 4 and the last 6, they were 2-4. If you want to be doom and gloom and be the guy that looks out the wrong side of the bus and looks at the rain and the rock wall, be my guest. If you want to be the guy that looks out the other side of the bus and sees the sunshine in the valley, also be my guest. And I think I'll probably sit in the aisle and be somewhere right in the middle. And is that a cheap way out? Maybe. Maybe it is. But I think if you looked at a 10-game sample size and said they were going to go 6-4 on a 10-game road trip, I'd be totally okay with it. They're now 34 and 32 on the road. They're 2 games over 500 on the road. They are 16 games over 500 at home. If you extrapolate that out for the remainder of the season, the Phillies going 16 games over 500 at home would be 49 and 33 at home. And if you extrapolate that out to the road trip, the 81 games on the road, they would be 42 and 39. And that would get you to, 90? That gets you to 90 wins? Math is hard. Anyway, the point is, they're playing just about where you would expect a team to be of their skill set in their home-to-road splits. But I also understand the way that we talked on Friday, and I know I'm kind of talking in circles here, but I'm just trying to lay out the entire groundwork for this conversation. The way we talked about on Friday, they probably could have been a 7-3 road trip, and you feel a little bit better about it than 6-4. But walking away after 10 games at 6-4 when you're playing 10 games in 10 days with 3 cities, and I get it, the Nationals stink. I'm okay with it. And before we hit the break, I'm going to welcome our second member of today's program into the show, our producer, our co-host, Andrew Frazier. First and foremost, Andrew, happy Monday to you, I guess. Yeah. Have you survived your mouse-related scare?
I'm still dealing with some trauma here.
So If you have, I'm sure everybody who's listening to the show has heard of our mouse problem before.
It's been talked about, yeah.
We have a Monday morning producer call. I'm on it. Andrew's on it. Bree, Brenna, our interns, Julia, Jamie, all of our producers.
All our fine production
our
team
production
here.
team is on this call. Midway through the call, it looks like Andrew just saw a ghost. And did you jump on a table or on your chair?
No, I just tried to jump out of the way.
Flying mouse attack.
Flying mouse attack. I'm sitting there, and we're having our meeting, our lovely meeting, as we do every week. And I look in the peripheral, the corner of my eye, I see some movement. And I look to see what it is, and here it is, a mouse sitting on a windowsill. And as soon as I look at it, it jumps towards me and tries to land into my lap.
All right.
And,
I don't blame you for freaking out.
First reaction is to jump out of the way. I do not want a rodent landing on me in any way, shape, or form. I don't know what it has. And, then I was trying to get out of the way. It proceeded to kind of scurry around my legs a little bit. And I didn't know if it was trying to get on me. I was also trying not to step on it because
wants to be friends.
I don't want to squish a mouse with my big feet.
Five-0 goes west.
Yeah,
Five-0
goes up my leg. So we had that little catastrophe.
Yeah,
there,
it was good comedic relief for a morning that's been kind of crummy.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah.
Let me ask you this. So I kind of laid it all out there. 6-4 road trip happened how it happened. Are you more in the mindset of now that it's done, 6-4, not a bad place to be, or they win the first 4, should have gotten a little bit more?
I'd love to answer that question if this team was healthy. I don't know. Take out the big story of the whole thing.
Yep.
I'm happy that they went 6-4.
Okay.
Am I upset that they split with the Nationals? Yes. I don't think they should have split that series. I think that they should have won at least 3 of the 4. There should be no reason that they didn't. The Nationals are an inferior team. They didn't even have Wood in the one game, so it makes no sense that they weren't even able to win that.
5 up on the Mets still.
5 up on the Mets.
They entered the road trip up 2.5. They leave the road trip up 5. Now, that's a product of also the Mets playing some awful baseball right now.
Yeah, they're playing.
But despite the fact that there have been some question marks this last 10 days, the question about Zack Wheeler, about Joan Duran, about Aaron Nola's return, about arm fatigue with guys like Ranger Suarez.
Yeah.
They doubled up their lead in the division from 2.5 to 5 because, they played solid enough baseball. And I agree with you. Like, if you think about Saturday and Thursday, I believe if you gave me one of those 2 games, they should have won Thursday.
Sure.
Thursday's game, we talked a lot about it on Friday. Thursday's game was really frustrating.
Yeah.
Saturday, offense didn't do anything. Also frustrating. But I will say, some good to take away from it. Walker pitched well. Bullpen was good.
Sure, yeah.
Just didn't get any life. If you said to me which one should they have won, I would have said Thursday. And then I would have been really, really happy with Thursday, Friday, Sunday, 7-3 road trip.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. They need these wins. Obviously, they need to try to, stack these wins as much as possible and get that advantage because who knows what the future is going to look like for this team right now.
And another good team coming up this week, too. Seattle comes to town beginning today.
This is going to be a big test for them.
Really good pitching staff.
Really good pitching staff. Really good hitters.
Yeah.
And, this is going to be a challenge and a test for our pitching staff here to see what they can do, what Suarez can do. If we need him to get back into form or find a way to be serviceable, because we're going to be looking for a game 2 starter. And I've been joking about it for the couple weeks now, just because Taijuan Walker has been so good. And I've been saying on Anthony's show, game 3 starter.
Remember a couple weeks ago, man, you were like, hey, let's figure out who might be on a postseason roster. And we're like, Taijuan Walker. Yeah, probably. There's no question about it. Taijuan Walker's firmly supplanted himself in this on a postseason roster.
He might be a game 2, game 3 starter.
Well, if they get to a CS, and that's asking a lot, but if they get to a CS, he legitimately could start a game.
Yeah.
No question about it.
Without a doubt.
I mean, it's him or Nola, right?
I mean, but that's the thing, Tyler, is with the production of Nola, I mean, I want to pump the brakes on Nola a little bit. I think I understand he came back, he let up 6 runs, and I understand how we saw him start the season.
Sure.
He did not look good. The man just got back from injury. So let's give him
I think on
2 or 3 more starts and see how he does before we're like,
I think on the surface, you can say that A, it was a bad start. And B, you're right, he hasn't pitched in 3 months.
Yeah, I mean,
so you slow play this thing a little bit.
The speed of the majors, he's been down in the minors, things are different. Let him adjust. Give him 2 or 3 more starts to see how he does before we're completely write him off and say that he's cooked or done or whatever.
All right. So I apologize. Go ahead.
No, and then I was going to say with how Rangers been performing, Luzardo has been hot and cold as of late. I don't know. I don't know what this pitching staff is going to look like.
I think, compared to 2 weeks ago, there's more questions than we had, even a week ago. There's more questions, and it's because of what we're going to talk about next, which is the Zack Wheeler situation.
Yeah.
And we'll dive a little bit further into that in further detail on the other side. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We are broadcasting live from the Xfinity Lounge here at the PHLY studios. We are brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. As I said, on the other side, Zack Wheeler conversation, our Ace Hardware temp check segment. We'll check in on who's heating up or cooling down. We'll get into the MLB expansion conversation at the end of the show, and we'll wrap it up with talking about the Seattle Mariners series that begins tonight at Citizens Bank Park. All right, it's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We'll be right back after this. When you think of all-time SUVs, what are you thinking about? I bet you Ford comes to mind, and the Ford Explorer comes to mind because it is America's all-time best-selling SUV. It's a legacy of family trust and performance. It offers that third-row standard 7 passengers. It's great for a growing family, a road trip. You got to take the kids to practice, and you got a team's worth of players in your car. You got that third row. Everybody's going to fit very comfortably. It also is available in rear-wheel drive or intelligent 4-wheel drive for better traction and control. It comes with a choice of 3 powertrains, including a hybrid for better fuel economy. And the engine is incredible. Offers up to 300 horsepower. That's standard. How about this? A 3-liter EcoBoost V6 can kick that up to almost 400 horsepower in the ST trim as well. Just so many different options with the Explorer. You can go for the power. You can go for the efficiency with the hybrid model that offers over 500 miles of driving range with a great balance of power and economy. You can't go wrong with the Ford Explorer. Standard Apple CarPlay, Android Auto as well across all of their trims. And, it's built for families who love an adventure. It's a true do-it-all SUV. So for more information, head on over to your local Ford store today to get in on your next new SUV. Probably the best SUV on the market. All right, let's talk about our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Find out why 90 million users worldwide have been able to live stream 780,000 events each and every year across 78 different sports. If you're like me and you've got a little one at home who all of a sudden, like clockwork, likes to wake up at 2:30 every single morning and scream like, he just was in a nightmare, you might want to get in on some live action before you head back to bed. You can do that with our friends over at Bet365. And with the MLB early payout as the season unfolds, if your team is up by 5 runs at any point, you're going to get an instant payout on straight bets and parlay selections marked as winners. New customers right now get $150 back in bonus bets when you bet $5. So here's what you're going to do. Use the promo code at the bottom of your screen, PHLY365. Deposit $10, place a bet for $5, and you get $150 back in bonus bets, whether your $5 bet wins or loses. Your bets can be used on spreads, totals, player props, futures, and so much more. Find out why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 and physically located in PA. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, please call gambler. All right, welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast, brought to you by our friends at Bet365. We are broadcasting live from the Xfinity Lounge here at the PHLY studios. Tyler Zulli, Andrew Frazier, and it's time to talk about Zack Wheeler. And again, Rich Hoffman and Jamie Lynch did an awesome job on their emergency pod on Saturday night. Thank you to those guys for helping me out while I was on dad duty. I'm going to say two things right off the rip because I think, A, they're important, and B, I believe in transparency. The important part of this is baseball does not matter when it comes to this conversation. Blood clots can be very, very scary. They are very fickle. They're unpredictable. And they can lead to some really serious things if they go untreated or undiagnosed. So when it comes to Zack Wheeler and his health and his future and his family, nothing is more important than that. Baseball is not secondary or third. It is way down the list of things when it comes to a serious medical statement or, situation like a blood clot. So that's the first and foremost, most important thing. I think we should all be very happy that this was discovered and they're able to diagnose and start treatment and start rest, because there are a lot of worse scenarios that a blood clot could lead to if undiagnosed and untreated and unrecognized. So the first thing that I believe is the most important thing in this conversation is the relative health and now the well-being and, recovery process for Zack Wheeler and his family. That's the first thing we need to talk about. Second, and I believe this is the transparency part that comes into play. Obviously, I am not a medical doctor. I have no medical experience whatsoever. I don't know the first thing about anything when it comes to this situation. So what I did was I went two different routes. First and foremost, I read up on what I could. There were some journals and some studies done on this particular situation, which, by the way, is still a little bit murky, still a little bit questionable as to what exactly the process is, what exactly the diagnosis is. And it's not something that more times than not, it's something that teams will give you as very little information as possible, because it's not, hey, he has a shoulder strain or elbow fatigue or ankle injury. Like, this is more serious than that. And they give you just enough, like, I guess, whatever they're mandated to give you. So what I did was I went and I read some medical journals and I read some studies that were done about the particular situation surrounding this. And I also contacted medical professionals in my life that may have a better understanding of what this situation may lead to. I spoke to 3 separate athletic trainers who combined probably have upwards of 3 decades of medical sports medicine practice and professional sports medicine practice in their lives. They know a lot more than me. And so when you don't know something, you talk to the people that do know things. And I spoke to 3 sports medicine professionals about this, and they kind of gave me an understanding of what a timeline and such may look like. So the first thing that we need to diagnose, not diagnose, probably the wrong word. The first thing that we need to understand is what this situation is. And so, like I said, they gave you the understanding that it was a blood clot in an upper extremity. And then I think what some doctors and those in the medical field have started to put together is that this blood clot is related to thoracic outlet syndrome. And if you remember thoracic outlet syndrome, probably the most infamous or famous or infamous, however you want to look at it, case of it in Philadelphia sports was with Markelle Fultz. Different situation here, I think, because of the blood clot, pairing with this thoracic outlet syndrome. But basically what I gathered, and this is from the National Library of Medicine, they did a study on thoracic outlet syndrome in pitchers back in 2020. And then I'll tell you what the professionals I spoke to told me. If it's thoracic outlet syndrome, that's a big if. And if, again, perhaps if, big if, Zack Wheeler might need surgery, the surgery would call for a surgical resection of a rib. And basically what that would mean is that it would be a surgery that would kind of alleviate pressure in the ribs that would lead to TOS, which would possibly lead to the blood clot. Return to play data, according to this study and by those that I've spoken to, is pretty limited. And it also varies drastically. One medical professional that I spoke to who works with collegiate rowers told me that they've had rowers get back in as little as 4 to 6 weeks. They followed up and said, however, the problem is with this being an overhead sport as baseball is, and on top of it being a pitcher with repeatable overhead motions, you could see, without surgery, 8 to 12 weeks. Now, they followed up and said this is working with collegiate athletes, and progression of these things tends to happen a little bit more quickly with pro athletes as it does to collegiate athletes, because I think maybe take a little bit extra time with college athletes or whatever it might be. I don't know. But 8 to 12 weeks was the marker that I was given by one professional. Then a couple more followed up and said, and I'm going to read this verbatim so I don't get anything wrong here. Excuse me. Give me 1 second. I apologize. Here's another one. Quote, would honestly say best case scenario is that the clot is removed and maybe he's back by postseason. Worst case scenario, he could be out till middle of next year. It completely depends on how it's treated and if surgery is necessary. The follow-up was potentially go in with a catheter and remove it. Sometimes surgeons, and this is where the rib resection comes in, is that they may remove the first rib if it's causing compression of those vessels. And that is kind of where we're at with if surgery is necessary. So then to get back to the National Library of Medicine study, the study identified 26 players who were diagnosed with thoracic outlet syndrome who also underwent rib resection surgery. Players' age and BMI at the time of surgery was about 30 years, give or take about 3 years, and 27, give or take 1.6 kilograms per meter squared, respectively. So basically what you're saying is athletes somewhere in the 27 to 33 range who are in relatively good shape. Obviously, they're professional athletes. At the time of the study, 5 players were actively pitching in the major leagues at that time. Overall, and remember, it was 26 players that they identified. Overall, 21 players, or 81% of those players, were able to return to play in Major League Baseball, and 65% of those players returned to play for more than one season post-operatively. The non-return to play section of that was significantly higher in relievers than it was in the return to play cohort section of that conversation. My guess being has something to do with velocity, perhaps, has something to do with exertion, perhaps. But they found that relievers, more times than not, return to play more infrequently than others, position players and starters. So 81% return to play. That's the good news. This is not an injury that, or even a diagnosis, if they did go and clean up the blood clot and have and give him rest and recuperation and have to do surgery, there's a 4 in 5 chance that Zack Wheeler returns to play. It's a very strong likelihood. The question really is he going to return to play this year, or will it be more likely that they hold him out because of a variety of different things? Surgery, how serious the blood clot is, are they able to remove the blood clot? Do they have to put him on blood thinners, and is he able to pitch via taking blood thinners? There's a lot of different things that go into play. So to end up that study, they said, the Library of Medicine said, the finding of this study suggests that players undergoing rib resection for thoracic outlet syndrome can expect to return to play at a high rate at the same performance level or better as compared to before undergoing rib resection surgery. So again, the good news is the expectation for Zack Wheeler will be eventually he will be able to return to play. Overwhelmingly, the studies suggest that he will be able to return to play. All of this, though, is to say 2 things. One, this case study applies to Zack Wheeler only if it truly is TOS and Wheeler ends up having to get that rib resection to fix the issue. And B, number two, blood clots aren't like homogenous across the board. They're not just one thing and it's a blood clot is a blood clot is a blood clot. It could take weeks. It could take months, because a follow-up that I got after that was one of the professionals I spoke to said they spoke to a cohort who worked in Major League Baseball for a while. And that cohort said, basically, it varies a lot depending on how they treat it. But he seemed to think that since he's a pitcher, it could probably be or could be 8 to 12 months if he's having the decompression surgery. So, with that being said, I don't have a definitive timeline. And I don't think medical professionals, unfortunately, have a definitive timeline. And Andrew, that's where kind of the scary uncertainty of this whole thing comes in. Because even me and you, without medical expertise, can understand this could be a scenario where maybe you see him in the postseason. Maybe you see him in spring training. Maybe you don't see him pitch until May or June.
Yeah.
It's a very wide-ranging issue, and that's why, like I said, blood clots are not a homogeneous same thing across the board.
Yeah.
They vary. The variables on those are massive.
Yeah.
And so I think timetables, even amongst medical professionals, they can't come to a consensus. And that's a scary thought. Not because of baseball, because of life, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a scary thought.
And first, I want to applaud you for going and doing all of that research and getting the, from medical experts. That's really good knowledge that you just shared with everybody here, and helps put things in perspective of like what are potential outcomes for Zack Wheeler. I just think, this is my personal opinion, the Phillies are going to do their due diligence.
Sure.
And they're going to make sure that he gets the proper care that he needs. And I think that process itself is probably going to take a while. Dealing with a blood clot, dealing with how severe this injury is, or this medical diagnosis is, they want to make sure that the player, the man himself, Zack Wheeler, gets the proper attention that he needs, because you're dealing with something so severe. And you can't just jump right into any type of, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, X, Y, or Z. They want to make sure that he's getting everything properly done, so that he can, have a fulfilling career if that's the route he wants to go after something like this, or he is not dealing with something for a prolonged time in his life. Because anything with dealing with blood clots, I'm not an expert either, and you said it early off the bat, when you started the segment, and I'll also say the same thing. I have no idea about blood clots. I'm not an expert. I've never dealt with them. I haven't had a personal a family member or friend.
You hear it sounds
but they're severe
intimidating.
And they're intimidating. And we know that they can be life-threatening. And that's the biggest thing about this whole thing, is that, you got to really make sure that you're taking the proper steps. And I personally believe, and this is not just to be a hot take, this is, take it as it is. It could be definitely different, outcome than what I'm going to say. I personally believe that we do not see Zack Wheeler for the remainder of this year.
I tend to agree, based on all the information that we've ingested in the last 20 minutes and what we've done over the last couple of days. I tend to agree that the likelihood that we see Zack Wheeler this season is very, very low.
I would almost put money on it to say that he won't be back for this postseason. Yeah. And as a Phillies fan, fandom, it sucks. But as a caring, empathetic person, this is a human being, and we have to understand that.
And that's why I started the segment right off the rip. Like, that's the most important thing. Like, the baseball side of things, like, yes, of course, we're Phillies fans, and we have a really cool job where we get to talk about our favorite teams on the daily basis. But, like, at the end of the day, the health is more important than the postseason run.
Yeah.
And so, like you said, the ability to catch this, the diagnosis of it, what follows, whatever steps they decide to take, whether it is surgery, whether it is removal, whether it is again, I don't know the ins and outs the way that some do, But I think that part of it is the most important part of it.
Yeah. And Futz, you just asked, hoping that Ant has a doctor on the show to talk about this. Well, this morning he actually had Dr. Mike on from Penn Medicine to talk about Zack Wheeler. And from what he heard, and now I'm paraphrasing, but from what he understands is that they didn't know that Zack had this blood clot. They had no idea. I believe that he mentioned the symptoms that he was having to a specialist. And that specialist identified that this could be a possibility. And then they took him right in to have the MRI. And then they realized that through the MRI, they saw that there was a clot there. Zack Wheeler could have gone playing without knowing that he had the clot if he did not talk to the right person. So just for everybody out there, really make sure, it can happen to anybody. A blood clot can happen at any time for anyone at random points. Please make sure that you're taking the necessary precautions. And, if you feel something weird or anything, make sure you get it checked out. But if you'd like to listen to Dr. Mike, you can go back to Anthony's show this morning and listen to him. He goes into full detail of what the blood clot is, what it potentially could be, and also his diagnosis of what he thinks, what he said about 3 months is probably the timetable for Zack Wheeler in his recovery.
3 months kind of gets you to that 8 to 12 weeks type of spot, right? And and that's kind of, to me, like, it feels like such an unknown where you hear, other diagnoses. And like I said, the difference, the big difference in the one professional that I spoke to with rowers, it's a this motion, right? So rowers have a tendency to crack ribs on their non-dominant side, because more times than not, like, you think about rowing an individual boat, you're doing this, but rowers, like on a cog with like grouping, they're all on one side.
Yes.
So it's all one motion.
It's
so
the consistent motion of this. Yeah.
Right. So they tend to end up having rib injuries in that spot. Now think about that. If that's 4 to 6 weeks, right? Now you got to do this repeatedly.
Yeah.
Right. Which is not a fluid motion to begin with, right? Pitching is not whoever decided overhand pitching, it was a bad decision. And as we get further and further into velocity and breaking, and snapping the wrists and snapping the elbows and things like that, more issues become about. So if you're constantly overhead doing this, like, you could just sit and do this, feel it in your ribs a little bit, right?
Yeah, of course.
Now do it with an injury, do it with a potential blood clot.
Yeah,
you're going to notice it eventually, right?
So and the scary thing about that is, not if he didn't know, if he didn't talk to the specialist and bring up these symptoms, that blood clot breaks off in any way. If that goes into your lungs, that's deadly. That can be life ending. So so it's really scary stuff.
So to wrap this up, I think obviously the big takeaway is as much love and support to Zack Wheeler and his family as you can. The human side of it's far more important than the baseball side of it. If you're curious about the baseball side of it, timelines have varied pretty drastically. But I think based on the doctor you guys spoke to today, the people that I've spoken to, I would tend to believe that we have probably seen Zack Wheeler throw his last pitch in 2025. And that is kind of where we'll wrap things up for this conversation. On the other side, we'll get into our Ace Hardware temp check segment, check in on who's heating up or cooling down. We have a player that's been heating up over the last 10 days or so. And we'll get into this realignment, because I think expansion, this might be the first time that expansion really, really changes the scope of baseball as we know it. And it's done it before, but we could see drastic changes if they decide to go in a different direction as opposed to how divisions are currently structured. We'll do it on the other side. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We are broadcasting live from the Xfinity Lounge here at the PHLY studios. We are presented to you by our friends over at Bet365, and we will be right back after this. Listen, things change all the time. Rules get rewritten, records are broken, our athletes take a step, and then they get passed by somebody else. And the home run record falls, and the strikeout record may never fall, but you get my point. Things change all the time, but no matter what changes over a 5-year period, one thing you know is not going to change is the price of your internet with our friends at Xfinity. Life can be unpredictable, but the price of your internet shouldn't be, so get reliable pricing at reliable connection speeds with our friends at Xfinity. And with them, all in means all in. You'll get Wi-Fi, equipment, and unlimited data included with their new 5-year price guarantee, one internet price, 5 years guaranteed. Learn more at Xfinity.com. Restrictions do apply. New residential customers only. Taxes and fees extra and subject to change. Again, Xfinity.com for all of the information. Let me tell you about the Helpful Hardware folks and how they bring that Helpful Hardware folk feel right to your front door. That, of course, is our friends at Ace Hardware Home Services. Whether it's something small like an outlet or something that's more significant, plumbing, electric, heating, cooling, they've got the trusted pros that keep your home humming all year long. That's our friends over at Ace Hardware Home Services. They bring the helpful home, that helpful that you love from the store, all the way from Philly to the Jersey Shore, right to your front door. And at Ace, they're going to bring experience. They're local plumbers and techs that handle everything from repairs and seasonal maintenance to installation and upgrades. They bring helpful, they bring understanding, and of course, they bring that experience. It's service you can trust and satisfaction that is guaranteed. And Ace Hardware Home Services are local. Their teams live and serve your community, and they're dedicated to keeping their neighbors comfortable in their homes. Visit Ace Hardware Home Services online at acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project today. All right, welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. We are broadcasting live from the Xfinity Lounge here at the PHLY studios. Tyler Zulli and Andrew Frazier. And why don't we get into, speaking of Ace Hardware, why don't we get into our Ace Hardware Temp Check segment, which of course is brought to you by our friends over at Ace Hardware Home Services, acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project today, where we check in on who's heating up or cooling down. And one guy who's been on a little bit of a tear over the last 10 days or so, that's Trey Turner. Trey Turner now with a 7-game hit streak with 13 hits in that span. His average over that span has raised from 282 to 291, and his OPS is now back up to 780. He's also hit in 10 of his last 12 games. And I will say this, I think it's safe to say that Trey Turner had a little bit of an uninspiring month of July. Like, if you looked at it and you said, if you just like stripped away Trey Turner, the importance to the offense, what he does well, what he does poorly, and you said he had a month where he hit 268 in the month of July, you'd go, that was okay. It was not a bad month, right? I know he's a guy that hits more 280, 290 in the season, but a 268 month isn't going to hurt a guy all that much. But it felt like in the month of July, even with a near 270 average, it felt like it was a lot of unproductivity from Trey Turner. So from the date of July 6th to August 5th, which is effectively a month, his average dropped from 301 to 280. Over that month span, his average dropped 21 points, and his OPS dropped almost 60 points from 807 to 749. He really struggled with consistency over the month stretch from July 6th to August 5th. And the funny thing about this whole thing is, like, if you looked at the game log, you would see that Trey Turner hit in 14 of 24 games over that stretch. But the problem was there was a lot of 1 for 4, a lot of 1 for 5. So, yeah, he was picking up hits on a game-by-game basis, but his average over a game would be 250 or 200, and that's why the average started to plummet a little bit. You saw him go from over 300 to 280. And really, more importantly, the extra base hit power started to sap a little bit, and he went from 807 to 749 in his OPS. But since that time frame, as I said, 13 hits over the last 7 games, and he has at least 1 hit in 10 of his last 12. He is now back in the lead for the most hits in the National League with 147. He's second across Major League Baseball. Only Bo Bichette has more with 153. And his next hit will be career hit number 1,500. Now, that doesn't matter in the span of a season, but it's pretty impressive to say that he's going to, like, another milestone will be reached as a member of the Phillies with 1,500 career hits. Andrew and I talked about Trey Turner a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about the known and the unknown, and the known for this offense is Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber, and the unknown is the back end of the lineup. It's the platoon in left. It's the platoon at second. It's what does Alec Boehm look like when he comes back from the injured list. Hit a home run yesterday, looked pretty good. It's center field. And if you can have one less unknown, the better. And I think Trey Turner is not an unknown. I think there's going to be a lot of weight on the shoulders of Trey Turner to be a catalyst for this team. Because if Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper can come up with runners on base, especially with the fact that Trey Turner is one of the best base runners in all of baseball, you can create some havoc. Get him on the move, do a little hit and run, first to third, second to home, first to home in some instances. When Trey Turner gets on base, he has a propensity to score runs. And so there's going to be a lot of pressure put on Trey Turner come postseason to be a catalyst at the top of the lineup. And if he's the guy that you had leading off in, like after Bryson Stott left the leadoff spot and it was all Trey Turner pretty much all the time, and they were getting a lot of first inning runs in the month of May and into early June, that's the Trey Turner that they're going to need to set the table for Bryce Harper and Kyle Schwarber come postseason time. If you can get Trey Turner consistent and get one of the final four on any given night, meaning either Stott or Sosa, meaning either Kepler or Bader, meaning Marsh or Bader, and meaning third base, if you can get one of those four and Trey Turner going with Schwarber and with Harper, your offense will be much more productive than you've seen in spurts so far this year, like on Saturday when they scored no runs, like on Thursday when they scored 2 runs. But Trey Turner is going to shoulder a big burden come postseason time, and it's why he's paid the big money. His defense has vastly improved. He's a 9 outs above replacement this year, which is wild to me. And his offense is going to be a catalyst come postseason time. And if he hits the way that he has over the last 2 weeks, this offense looks vastly different. And that's our Ace Hardware Temp Check segment brought to you by our friends over at Ace Hardware Home Services. Head on over to acehardwarehomeservices.com to get started on your next project today. All right, one more break before we get into our final segment. We're going to talk about what expansion could look like as we wrap up this afternoon's episode. It's the PHLY Phillies podcast. We are broadcasting live from the Xfinity Lounge. We are brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. And we will be right back after this. All right, you know that moment, that one where you realize that you left your favorite pair of shades at the beach, on the roof of your car. You're driving down the turnpike, they're gone. At the beach, gone. They're in the ocean, 3 states away. You're not getting them back. But don't worry. I've been in that spot, and that's why I trust Shady Rays to give me the best protection in all of eyewear. When I found Shady Rays, they changed the game for me. They're made for real-life situations just like that. Plus, they're seriously good-looking, polarized lenses, durable frames, and they're not stupidly expensive either. They're going to work with you, and it's why it's the eyewear company that has your back. So now when you go out, you go to the beach, you go to the theme park, you go to a concert outdoors, whatever it might be, you can wear your sunglasses with confidence with our friends over at Shady Rays. And with Shady Rays, you get an awesome deal. Look at that one, bottom of your screen. 35% off a pair of polarized lenses. That is a great deal. All you have to do is use the promo code PHLY when you go to shadyrays.com. You can find out for yourself why these shades are rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. All right, looking to pop the question to your special someone? Well, Golden Nugget Jewelers is the only place that I would recommend because for over 30 years, they have operated out of the very same location in the heart of Philadelphia. Customers from Pennsylvania, Jersey, and even New York City and Baltimore have come to Golden Nugget Jeweler to find the perfect engagement ring or wedding band. Why? Well, first of all, you're going to get an awesome selection of both engagement rings and wedding bands, and their staff is incredibly highly trained and dedicated to providing you a personalized one-on-one experience that is going to match exactly what you're looking for with the budget that you have in mind, and you're going to walk out of there thinking, wow, and your special someone is going to think, wow, as well. They have a vast selection of engagement rings and wedding bands, but it's not just engagement and wedding rings that they have. They also offer high-end watches, fashion jewelry, sparkling diamond necklaces, bracelets, earrings, and so much more. And that's why if you want to get if you wanted to get an expert that offers you the best price, you head on over to Golden Nugget Jeweler, where Philly gets engaged. Visit goldennuggetjewelry.com today to learn more. All right, welcome back to the PHLY Phillies podcast. About 5 minutes left on today's episode. Tyler Zulli, Andrew Frazier, and you, of course. Thanks so much for hanging out with us and checking us out. So expansion has felt inevitable for a while when it comes to Major League Baseball. I think for quite some time now, 32 teams is an expectation that is going to be met. When does that happen? I don't know, but Rob Manfred has made it seem like it may happen sooner rather than later. So, with that being said, it always comes up with the question of what do divisions and expansions look like? So, Jim Bowden of The Athletic posted what an expansion may look like. And before we get to that, the question is, where are the two teams going to be played? Where are they going to play? I think Nashville is inevitable. Nashville has been at the top of this conversation for a really long time now. I think Nashville is inevitable. And not only do I think Nashville is inevitable, I think the first president of baseball operations for the new Nashville Expansion Club is Dave Dombrowski. I firmly believe that Dave Dombrowski's tenure with the Phillies ends when Nashville's organization begins. Now, where does the other team sit? To me, I've always been a big believer of, I think if Nashville's going to play in the National League, then there should be a team in the American League. And I would suggest Portland is the city that I would suggest. But if you suggest San Antonio, perhaps Vegas made sense prior to what the Athletics were going to be, but not likely now. Does another team go in Canada? Interesting situation. Does Montreal get another team? They would be another
Bring back
NL
the
team.
Expos.
Who's that?
I said bring back the Expos.
Yeah, does Montreal get another? Now, the question is, would they be another National League team? Would probably, right? So I've always been, if you're going to expand, you should go 1-1.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And then you
definitely
can operate with 16 teams in each league and change your divisions based on that, as opposed to what feels like is inevitable, the potential changing and redistricting based on location.
Yeah.
So I've always believed Nashville and Portland.
Could
Portland
Carolinas get one?
The Carolinas?
Yeah.
Do a Charlotte team?
A Charlotte?
Charlotte would make a lot of sense. And if you believe that, you and Jim Bowden are in lockstep, because he also believes Charlotte would make a good destination. But the problem is, if you do Charlotte and Nashville, that's probably two National League teams. Then you've got to flip teams into the American League. The last time we saw a team get flipped from the National League to the American League was the Houston Astros, when they went in 2016, I believe it was?
Yeah.
The Astros went from the NL Central to the American League West. That made sense because for whatever stupid reason, there were 6 teams in the NL Central and 4 in the AL West. That was dumb. It was always dumb. It made sense to go 5-5-5 across 3 divisions across the 2 leagues. If you go to Charlotte and Nashville, now I will say this. There's a team in Nashville in hockey. They play in the Western Conference. Well, there's a team in Memphis, which is a little further west, obviously, in Tennessee, in the NBA. They also play in the Western Conference.
And not that like the NFC, AFC, but like the Titans play in the AFC.
In the AFC, right. So could the Nashville team be an American League team?
I think I
guess it's plausible. Could they play in the American League East? Or could maybe the American League Central even? And play with the Tigers and White Sox and all that?
Either the Central or the East, yeah.
The easiest way to go about it, if you're doing Charlotte-Nashville, would be Nashville in the American League, Charlotte in the National League. And you would put Charlotte in a division with the Marlins, the Braves, the Nationals, Charlotte, and you'd have to figure out a 5th team.
So it would be the South.
It would be the National League South. Mm-hmm. Right. But the other conversation about this is probably the more intriguing one, but it's way more difficult to restructure, is do you do it by alignment in geography? Jim Bowden proposed that. I did this with a buddy like 3 years ago. We were sitting around one day drinking beer, and we're like, yo, let's come up, because we're losers. And that's what we came up with. I don't remember who was in each, but Jim Bowden from The Athletic did it recently. And do we have the graphic from him?
We do, yes.
Here's what Jim Bowden proposed. Now, we'll read the teams first, and then we'll talk about the alignment. So Jim Bowden proposes the 4 divisions in I assume this would be what the National League, quote unquote, would be. Let's do this right away.
The Eastern and Western
the
Conference.
East is a bleep show.
Yeah.
And by the way, thanks to everybody who's tuned in on our streaming platforms, Roku, Samsung, Xfinity. Head on over to allphly.com to watch the rest of the show. We are officially in, I'm doing it, extra innings. I know it's still called overtime. We'll get it there one day. It's extra innings on this show. Dude,
that's
East,
the most toxic.
That's the exact word I was going to use. That is the most toxic division in the history of sports.
I love it, actually.
The Phillies fans are nuts. Yankees fans are nuts. Red Sox fans are nuts. Mets fans are nuts. That would be the most toxic. So you'd play, what do you play right now? 17-ish games against your division?
Yeah.
That would be what? 51 games against the Yankees, Mets, and Red Sox?
That's a tough
First
division,
of all, that
man.
would be difficult.
That's a super tough division.
Second of all, this is the insane asylum of Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
You have that division, and then somewhere along the line, you get the Reds, Guardians, Tigers, and Blue Jays, which is like, not in terms of skill set, but like fan base. It's like the powder puff division.
Yeah.
Then you get the Nationals, Orioles, Pirates, and expansion Charlotte, where two of those teams don't care about their teams because their ownership group's a disaster. Baltimore cares, but they've been bad for a couple years. They're on the upswing of the rebuild. And an expansion team.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the Rays and the Marlins don't exist.
The Braves will just own that.
The Braves their fans are only fans when they're good. And expansion Nashville. So how do you get the dog in the fire, this is fine meme, and then these three divisions of like everything is symbiotic and cool? I get why Jim did it. It makes a ton of sense from a geographical standpoint. It also makes a ton of sense in terms of like, if you wanted to structure rivalries, this is a really good way to structure rivalries, because the likely scenario is everybody in the East is within a 5-hour radius of each other.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The Phillies are the southernmost team.
Your neighbor, you're fighting your neighbors.
Right. Like, if you want to go to a road game, jump on the train, get to Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. Jump on the train, get to Flushings. Drive up to Boston. You could do all of those things relatively easily. It takes you more time to get to Atlanta and to Miami than it would to get to these teams that are not even in your league right now. So from a structural standpoint, I totally understand it. But like from a change of scope standpoint, this changes everything.
Yeah, it does.
I mean, the only teams within each division that would have their structured rivalries stay intact would be the Red Sox and the Yankees, would be, I guess, the Tigers and Guardians from an AL Central standpoint, but like, I don't know the pulse of Tigers and Cleveland compared to like Tigers in Chicago or that nature. The Mid-Atlantic, that's a joke. So is the Southeast, quite frankly. Padres Dodgers is a great rivalry, stays intact, and you can have the LA thing. What's some of the other ones? Cardinals. Like, to me, you can't take Cardinals Cubs out of the equation. I know you're doing it from a standpoint of geography.
Yeah.
But you cannot remove Cardinals Cubs as a rivalry. Cubs White Sox, of course, two Chicago teams. Any city that's got two easy in together. New York, Chicago, LA, totally makes sense. Washington and DC and Baltimore totally makes sense. But this would be the most monumental change in baseball division history.
Yeah. I think that this is great, and I love that Jim did this. I just don't see it actually happening just because of the fact there's so much historical significance with the NL and AL.
Sure.
The pulling the Yankees and the Red Sox out of the AL, it just doesn't. I just feel it doesn't.
Feels weird.
It feels weird.
Feels real weird.
It feels really weird.
So my guess would be the left is now I don't know. I assume it's the National League, quote unquote, right?
Would be, well, he has it as Eastern Conference and Western
Okay.
Conference.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even see that. You're right. Good
So
call.
really it should be Eastern League and Western League.
Right. So
the EL and the WL?
yeah, I don't know how I feel about this, to be quite honest. And again, I did this
Because you
exercise.
scrap the NL and the AL. You wouldn't have the
Yeah.
National League and the American
All right,
League
so
anymore.
in the Eastern Conference, quote unquote, there are, let's see, 2 and 2. Then there is 1 and 3. So it's 3 teams in the current National League, 4 in the, 5 in the American League, 2 and 1. So it's like 50-50. It is still like 50-50 split up.
Yeah.
There's no way they would destroy the bedrock of the game this much.
Yep.
I think the likeliest scenario, and we can drive, we're good, thank you. I think the likeliest scenario, Andrew, is one team goes to the American League, one team goes to the National League. I would imagine they would move the westernmost team to the NL West and the westernmost team to the AL West.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I'm trying to think just off the top of my head, you would probably see a team like, I mean, it's even hard to do this because does a team like the Tigers go to the AL West, the Guardians go to the AL West, or do you just, it's a hard like to do it off the top of your head. It's a hard comparison, but I think the most likely scenario would be you just end up having one new team in the AL, one new team in the AL, and you have 4 divisions of 4, which he did, which I think is the way they're going to go about it. But it gets restructured within the American League and National League and not like this mumbo jumbo mix of mess.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to ask you, like, what does a National League East look like? I would say, to me, it would be Phillies, Nationals, Pirates, Mets. Would probably there's going to be shakeup, no question about it. But I think you can do it internally within the AL and the NL without doing this geographic craziness.
So they stick to 4.
Yes, I think if you have 32 teams, you're going to have 4 divisions of 4.
Yeah.
So I think you would go.
Or do you put, we're just now, because he has Charlotte on there, does Charlotte go into the NL?
You could
East?
do Mets, Phillies, Nationals,
Charlotte.
Yeah. But then what do you do with Charlotte, Atlanta, Miami?
Well, Miami and Atlanta would go together.
Right. Would they go to the Central? Still feels weird, but...
Or do you make a new one and make it the Southeast?
Yeah, I think the thing about this is when they get to, like, the last time I guess they had this much structural change was when they went from 2 divisions to 3, right? So, I mean, this is going to demand a lot of change.
This is going to demand a lot of change because if you are going to make it the Southeast, it would make sense that Charlotte is in the Southeast because they're already down there. And then you would have the Mets, the Pirates, the Phillies, and you would have the Nationals.
Or in the Nationals, right.
Yeah, so those 4. You would have that. That would be your East.
Right. Because you're not going to put both expansion teams in one division.
No.
That would be unfair the 2 teams that would, like the other 2 teams, they would dominate right away. Like the Braves would win, if it was like Braves, Nashville, Miami, Charlotte, the Braves would win 100 games because they're getting all these games against an expansion team.
Yeah, I mean, if it is going to be Tennessee, if it's going to be Nashville, they're going to go AL.
Yeah, I think that's the easiest way to do it.
Like Charlotte's NL. Yeah.
So
I think that's how you do it.
The absolute easiest way to do it is to pick a West Coast city and then Nashville. But if you do want to do Nashville and Charlotte, Nashville's got to go to the American League.
Definitely.
It'll be interesting. I expected this in like a 2030-ish. Rob Manfred seems to have a conversation that the beginning may start earlier than that, which may be interesting. Maybe it's after the new CBA, 2027.
Could be.
We'll see. We went way over time. Thank you to everybody for hanging out with us. Andrew, thank you so much for producing today's show. Oh, before we get out of here, we have a super chat from our friend Frank Barber, who says the Mid-Atlantic Division would give us baseball's first sub 500 division winner. So that Mid-Atlantic division, going back and looking at it for a second, Orioles, Charlotte, Pirates, Nationals. Ugh.
Yeah, is right.
Gross. That would be the division. All right, big thanks to everybody. Thank you, Frank, for the super chat. I really appreciate it. So to Frank Barber, John Peace, Ray Schumacher, K-Red, John White, Chris Miller, Slem, everybody that was in the chat here. Really appreciate you all. Thank you so much for being a part of today's show. We'll be back on Wednesday afternoon, 1 o'clock here for the PHLY Phillies podcast. In the meantime, head on over to the PHLY Eagles podcast. They're live now. PHLY Sixers at 3. And we will talk to you at 1 o'clock on Wednesday on the PHLY Phillies podcast as we broadcast live from the Xfinity Lounge and brought to you by our friends over at Bet365. So for Andrew Frazier and myself, enjoy the start of the Phillies Mariners tonight. 3-game series beginning tonight, and they'll finally get a day off on Thursday. We'll talk more about the series on Wednesday afternoon as that series wraps up, and we'll talk to you then at 1 o'clock right here on the PHLY Phillies podcast. See you then.
We all silly like the mayor.